Excellent. This final lesson is where learners begin thinking like decision makers rather than document writers. A risk assessment, method statement, and JSA are all prepared before work begins, but real workplaces constantly change. Professional HSE officers must recognize those changes, reassess risk in real time, and know when to stop work. This lesson completes Module 9 and prepares learners for Module 10, Advanced Permit to Work in High-Risk Operations. Graduation Cap KHAB 17 HSE Global Safety Leader Professional Training Academy. Module 9, Advanced Risk Management and Work Planning. Lesson 5, Dynamic Risk Assessment. Wide shot of an excavation beside underground utilities on a refinery expansion project. The morning begins with clear weather. Halfway through the activity, dark clouds gather, strong winds develop, and heavy rain begins. Workers pause and look toward the HSE officer. Throughout this module, we've developed the skills needed to plan work professionally. You learned how to identify hazards. You learned how to assess risks. You learned how to prepare method statements. You learned how to develop job safety analyses. But today, we're going to discuss something that separates experienced HSE professionals from everyone else. What happens when the workplace changes after the work has already started? A risk assessment completed yesterday may no longer be valid today. A method statement approved this morning may no longer reflect conditions this afternoon. A job safety analysis reviewed before work may become outdated within minutes. Professional HSE officers understand one simple truth. Workplaces are dynamic. Conditions change. People change. Equipment changes. Weather changes. The job itself changes. And when those changes introduce new hazards, the original plan must also change. This is why dynamic risk assessment is one of the most valuable skills an HSE professional can possess. By the end of today's lesson, you will understand how to recognize changing conditions, reassess risk continuously, apply stop work authority responsibly, communicate effectively, and decide when work can safely resume. Let's begin. Learning objectives. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to white heavy checkmark explain dynamic risk assessment. White heavy checkmark identify changing workplace conditions. White heavy checkmark recognize when an existing risk assessment is no longer valid. White heavy checkmark apply stop work authority. White heavy checkmark determine when work can safely restart. White heavy checkmark communicate changes effectively. White heavy checkmark demonstrate professional decision-making under pressure. What is dynamic risk assessment? A dynamic risk assessment is a continuous process of assessing risk while work is in progress. Unlike a planned risk assessment, which is completed before work starts, a dynamic risk assessment is carried out whenever conditions change unexpectedly. It asks one important question. Is the work still safe to continue? This process aligns closely with ISO 45001's requirement for continual evaluation of operational controls, as well as NEBOSH's emphasis on monitoring changing conditions and IOSH's principle continuous risk awareness. Dynamic risk assessment is not a replacement for a formal risk assessment. It is an additional layer of protection. Planned vs. dynamic risk assessment. Let's compare them. Planned risk assessment. Completed. Before work begins. During planning. Based on expected conditions. Documented and approved. Dynamic risk assessment. Completed. During work. Whenever conditions change. Often verbally with the work team. Followed by updates to formal documentation if required. Professional HSE officers use both. One plans the work. The other keeps the work safe as conditions evolve. Morning. Workers begin excavating beside underground services. Everything is proceeding according to plan. The risk assessment is valid. Afternoon. Heavy rainfall begins. Water starts filling the excavation. The soil becomes unstable. Visibility decreases. Heavy equipment continues operating nearby. Has the hazard changed? No. Has the risk changed? Absolutely. The likelihood of trench collapse has increased. The original assessment is no longer sufficient. Recognizing changing conditions. Professional HSE officers constantly monitor for changes such as environmental changes, heavy rain, strong winds, lightning, extreme heat, dust storms, flooding, poor visibility, operational changes, new contractors arriving, additional equipment, SIMOPS introduced, work scope changes, delayed activities, equipment changes, crane malfunction, damaged lifting gear, loss of electrical power, gas detector failure, communication failure, human factors, fatigue, stress, worker illness, inexperienced replacement workers, miscommunication, rushing to meet deadlines. Every one of these changes may require the work to be reassessed. Case study: excavation beside underground utilities. You are the HSE officer supervising excavation beside underground electrical and hydrocarbon services. The excavation is protected with trench boxes. Barricades are installed. Workers are trained. Everything complies with the approved method statement. Then, heavy rain begins. Water rapidly accumulates. Soil starts collapsing from one side. The excavator operator's visibility decreases. The trench access ladder becomes slippery. Question: should work continue? Professional answer: no. Why? Because the original assumptions used in the risk assessment are no longer valid. Stop work authority. One of the most important responsibilities of an HSE professional is understanding stop work authority. Stop work authority means any competent person has both the authority and the responsibility to stop work when they believe conditions have become unsafe. This is not about challenging management. It is about preventing harm. Professional organizations encourage workers to stop work when controls have failed, new hazards appear, conditions change significantly, permits become invalid, emergency systems fail, workers are no longer competent to continue. A healthy safety culture supports responsible intervention without fear of retaliation. Leadership under pressure. Stopping work is often difficult. Production targets may be affected. Supervisors may feel pressure to continue. Contractors may worry about delays. However, professional HSE officers understand that delaying a job for 1 hour is always preferable to explaining a fatality during an incident investigation. Leadership is demonstrated through sound judgment, not through taking unnecessary risks. Decision-making process. When conditions change. Step 1. Recognize a change. Step 2. Pause the activity. Step 3. Inform the supervisor. Step 4. Reassess the hazards. Step 5. Determine whether existing controls remain effective. Step 6. Introduce additional controls if necessary. Step 7. Communicate changes to everyone involved. Step 8. Restart work only after confirming that the risk is acceptable. Restart criteria. Restarting work should never be automatic. Professional HSE officers verify. Weather has improved. Equipment remains serviceable. Barricades are intact. Permits remain valid. Workers understand revised controls. Supervisors approve recommencement. Emergency arrangements remain effective. Only then should work resume. Communication during dynamic risk assessment. Communication is critical. Workers must immediately report new hazards, equipment failures, environmental changes, unsafe behaviors, unexpected conditions. Effective communication may include toolbox talks, radio communication, supervisor briefings, permit amendments, updated JSAs, revised method statements. Professional HSE officers communicate early and clearly. Imagine you are supervising a lifting operation. Halfway through the lift, wind speeds increase above the manufacturer's operating limit. The project manager says, "Finish the lift quickly before the weather gets worse." What would you do? Would you continue? Or would you stop the lift? Think carefully. Your decision may determine whether everyone goes home safely. Common mistakes. New HSE officers sometimes assume yesterday's risk assessment still applies. Ignore changing weather. Continue working despite equipment faults. Fail to communicate new hazards. Delay stopping work due to production pressure. Restart work without reassessing conditions. These mistakes often contribute to serious incidents. Best practice. Experienced HSE professionals continuously observe the workplace. Encourage workers to report concerns. Apply stop work authority confidently. Review controls whenever conditions change. Update documentation where required. Hold short reassessment meetings. Never allow production pressure to override safety. Professional judgment protects people. Practical exercise. Scenario: A contractor is excavating beside underground utilities. Suddenly, heavy rainfall begins. Water starts filling the trench. One excavator develops a hydraulic leak. Additional contractors arrive to begin cable installation nearby. As the HSE officer, identify the new hazards. Decide whether work should continue. Recommend additional controls. Determine whether permits require revision. Explain your decision to the project manager. Discuss your response with your training group. Knowledge check. What is the difference between a planned risk assessment and a dynamic risk assessment? Give 5 examples of changing workplace conditions. What is stop work authority? When should work be restarted after conditions change? Why is communication essential during dynamic risk assessment? Module 9 Summary. Congratulations! You have completed Module 9, Advanced Risk Management and Work Planning. Over the past 5 lessons, you have learned how professional HSE officers plan, evaluate, and manage work before and during execution. You can now identify complex and interacting hazards, conduct professional risk assessments, apply risk matrices and the ALOT principle, prepare method statements for high-risk activities, develop job safety analyses, perform dynamic risk assessments, apply stop work authority appropriately, reassess work when conditions change, communicate changing risks effectively. These are the core planning competencies expected of HSE professionals across construction, oil and gas, petrochemical, manufacturing, and infrastructure projects. Employability Corner. After completing Module 9, you are developing the practical skills expected of HSE Officer, Safety Officer, Oil and Gas HSE Officer, Site Safety Supervisor, Permit Coordinator, Junior. You are now capable of contributing to professional planning meetings, reviewing work documentation, participating in risk management processes, and supporting supervisors in controlling high-risk activities. Preview Module 10. In Module 10, Advanced Permit to Work in High-Risk Operations, you will move from planning work to authorizing and controlling it. You will learn how professional permit-to-work systems manage activities such as hot work, confined space entry, excavation, lifting operations, electrical isolation, and lockout-tagout, LOTO, simultaneous operations, SIMAPs. You will also learn how permits interact, how permit conflicts are managed, and how HSE professionals ensure that high-risk work is carried out under strict control. This module reflects the system's use in major construction projects, refineries, offshore platforms, LNG plants, petrochemical facilities, and other high-hazard industries. Closing message. Every serious incident has a chain of events leading up to it. Professional HSE officers are trained to recognize that chain early, question changing conditions, and intervene before harm occurs. Never allow familiarity, routine, or production pressure to replace professional judgment. Your responsibility is not only to identify hazards or complete documents, but to lead with integrity, make informed decisions, and protect the people who rely on your guidance. Thank you for completing Module 9 with KHAB 17 Academy. Continue building your expertise, apply these principles in every workplace, and join us in Module 10 as we explore advanced permit-to-work systems and high-risk operations. Stay safe, stay observant, and keep leading by example.